Welcome to Sober Dad Crew, the podcast where we talk about all things sobriety, recovery, parenting, music, tattoos, work, and more. For more information, please visit soberdadcrew.com. My guest this episode is Kevin Sellers. We talk about parenting, divorce, single parenting, and the role straight edge punk plays in recovery. All right, Kevin, welcome to Sober Dad Crew.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm going to kick it off with the standard question. How many kids do you have?
I've got two. I've got a 6-year-old boy and then a daughter who is about 3.5.
You're in a busy stage of life.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I co-parent with their mother, my ex-wife. So, there's built-in little breaks here and there to catch up on all the rest of the things I do and, able to plan which days she and I have them or whatever around some of the other needs of our lives. So it's not, to be very straight, honestly, since we've separated, it feels less hectic than it did, when we were together, but it just works out to get a little break every once in a while.
I did that for years and years. I got remarried a few years ago and now have two stepkids in addition to my biological kids. So I've got 9, 13, 17, almost 18, and 21, almost 22. So I've got this range, but we'll dive into this a little bit. When I first split with their mom, we did this like split week thing.
Uh-huh.
It just didn't work well for the kids. And the oldest was, he was second grade or third grade. It was a long time ago. So then we went to every other week, and still switch day was really hard. So we went to this 2-week on, 2-week off schedule.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it was like having two lives. That I had this friend group and all this stuff that was outside of that kid world. And then you had kid world. I mean, I always went to the stuff, and we really worked hard to co-parent well together. And I think did a pretty good job at that. We always just said the rule was the kids come first, but it is an interesting dynamic to have kids and then not have your kids. And
yeah. And that's kind of what we do. The switch off every few days. We'll have 2 or 3 days with the kids and then switch off. We live within the same community. There's not any physical distance really. Their mother and myself are both around for all of their events and all of that sort of stuff. So it's rare that we spend a lot of time away from each other, even if it's not my night for them to stay here at my place or whatever. But, as they get older, we probably will end up moving towards more of a longer time frames. But right now, while they're kind of younger, it's really difficult to go more than a couple days without them.
Yeah, right. It's also weird. The 2-week thing was really weird. And we actually kept the 2-week thing up until COVID when, so that was my bubble, was her mom and her partner. It was this sort of weird, COVID bubble we had. But I was 2 weeks is a long time when you're not seeing any human beings because you're not leaving your house, except to run into the grocery store and run out. So then we went back to the every other week. And my 17, almost 18-year-old, she's a senior, but she still goes, back and forth every other week. We were actually just doing all her college application stuff, which was wild, filling out the dorm. What kind of roommate do you and don't you want? Questions. She's
man.
How do I say I want somebody who doesn't smell? Hygiene. How do you say that in a nice way?
Yeah. Oh man. I'm just still trying to get mine consistently using the potty the correct way and not causing trouble at school. So we'll get there. I couldn't imagine college at this point. It's that feels like a whole nother lifetime away.
I mean, that my oldest is almost 22 also astonishes me because in no way does it possibly feel like it's been that many years. I mean, I am old and grizzled and gray, and I look at those pictures of him, as a newborn, I mean, 22 years is a fucking long time, but it doesn't feel like that at all. It goes so fast.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's wild to me, just like, uh, my kids got a haircut like a week ago while I was out of town for a gig. So I came back, like, saw them a few days later, and I was like you both look a year older, and it's just like nothing happened. It's just been 4 days since I saw you.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, that's also like a super fun age, because they're like very magical and very play oriented, and yeah, I mean, I think every age is pretty cool, um, for sure.
Yeah, I've been trying to like enjoy each little phase they go through as much as possible, or like take solace in like the phases that annoy me a little bit or whatever, where it's like, this will probably pass pretty quickly.
And someday you might be like, oh, remember when they bit me, or whatever it is. But I think every age is cool, and I think I started reading like the developmental stuff because it sort of helped to generally know, like, broadly speaking, oh right, this is like a 3-year-old actually is supposed to be a little difficult because it's like this first pull of independence, right?
Yeah.
And they're doing it the only way they know how to do it.
Oh yeah, yeah. We're manifesting the scream and slap at you when we hear no and all of that with my daughter right now. And it's like, yeah, I remember that. That happened a few years ago with the older one. So, um,
There's a version of it that happens again when they're teenagers. Like
oh
toddlers and teenagers are kind of the same. They're just like bigger size, different vocabulary, more ability to slam doors.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Well, one thing I want to dig into, so you're straight edge.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
And so, a lot of times, and you've listened to the show, we sort of talk about people's recovery stories. But for you, I kind of, the question I'll ask it this way is sort of what is your relationship to, drugs and alcohol that sort of led to the decision to be straight edge?
it's a pretty big sobriety story because, in addition to like having claimed straight edge now in my, mid late 30s, um, I am also a recovering alcoholic and have some history of drug abuse in my past and all of that. So I don't want to go super deep on drugs because it's been a really long time. I've been clean from like opiates and marijuana and all that stuff for about 12 years now. Um, but I'm picking up 3 years of sobriety actually tomorrow. My sobriety date is May 1st.
Right on.
Um, and yeah, I'm sober through a 12-step program and kind of didn't really drink until I was about 17, 18 years old. Uh, but definitely like went off the deep end quick within those first like 4-ish years of like late teens, early adulthood. And by the time I was like 21, I was, addicted to Oxycontin, experimenting with other harder drugs, that kind of stuff. And drinking was always a really big problem for me. And I didn't realize I was an alcoholic until I met my ex-wife, who was a recovering alcoholic at the time. And, I hadn't like, it had barely even occurred to me that like AA was a thing outside of like what you see on TV. Um, but yeah, so like I would like tag along to meetings with her, and like when we started dating, I was like, yeah, obviously I don't want to drink anymore. Like seeing what you go through and want to be respectful of that. But like I always would drink every once in a while. And it was like, and that was when I realized like it was a problem that I was a problem drinker, that like the one time every month that I would like hang out with some friends and have a drink, it became like sloppy drunkenness. So I just kind of stopped drinking, like kind of it, in the program, you'll hear the term dry drunk a lot. Like I wasn't drinking, but like every 6 months or so, I would like decide to drink and fuck up my entire life for a few days. Um, and then somewhere around the time my son was born, I realized like I really had to clean up. Um, but it took me a couple years to get it together. And then when I got divorced, we're coming up on like 2.5 ish years. I had a few months sober, and I knew that that divorce and like the mental state that I was in would lead to a relapse, and that relapse would kill me, you know? So I finally like gave up and went to an AA meeting for myself for the first time. Um, it was cool. Stuck around just because I kind of had this inkling that like the only people I've ever seen make sobriety work for them are the ones who did that, you know. And so even though I didn't really want to be there, I just kept going, and now here we are a few years later, where like sobriety is a huge part of my life, and it's given me a bunch of gifts. It's given me back a relationship to my children. It's allowed me to like make up for some wrongs that I've done, and then like it allows me to make art and like be involved in like my artistic community and all of that stuff. Cause like if I were drinking, I used to sit around and talk about like, oh, I want to start this kind of band, or like I would love to write this novel or whatever, but then I just get drunk and not do it. And now I actually like have nothing to do with that energy besides do it. Like I do make art and I do write and I do all these things that I like used to dream about doing because I'm sober and I can put that energy into a positive thing.
Yeah, like alcohol, it's such an anchor, you know? And I think you don't even always know how much it's like pulling you down or slowing you down until you're like, oh yeah, you stop and you're like, oh right. That was really like impacting me and impacting my family and my work. It like impacts all the things. You don't think it does when you're in it until it gets bad. And then once you like lose the anchor, it does, you can just do stuff. Like, here we are. It's like, worked all day, kids in bed, it's 9 o'clock, we're recording. Like, we can do this because we're like clear headed, old dads.
Right, right. Yeah, like I got like so much shit done today. Like I worked I have a pretty typical like 9 to 5 white collar job. Then I came home and did some cleaning, and I went to the grocery market and picked up some stuff. And when I came home, I like sat down and worked on some design artwork for one of the musical projects I do, and then cooked myself something to eat. And like it's like man, like all of this energy that I have, and I'm not. I don't know, like I don't struggle with boredom anymore either because like I have this like this constant urge to like always keep doing something, and like I stay so busy, and like I'm never like I'm always exhausted, but I'm also like always extremely fulfilled with how much I like am able to achieve these days.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to circle into, I have also like a standard 9 to 5 job, which I have as like a heavily tattooed, like, old punk dude, so
Yeah.
it's interesting. Like, I think sort of punks and hardcore people are like very good at business.
It's that DIY spirit,
It's the
man. You got to
DIY
do it.
thing.
Yeah, you just got to do it.
I think, and I was joking with my wife at one point. I was like, I think sometimes I get hung up because I have such a high ethical threshold that sometimes I'm like a little unforgiving, and I'm like, right is right and wrong is wrong.
Yeah. Uh,
And I think that can be really hard just in life to be like that rigid. I mean, in the end, I can't be, but part of it is it's like if it's wrong, it's wrong.
yeah. No, I totally get it. I I do this series of interviews on this fanzine that I publish, and I recently published an interview with a friend, Reed Haythcock, who he had this quote that like has like latched with me since then. That he said like being involved in DIY like punk and hardcore creates a set of brain damage, but like not like actual physical brain damage. It's brain damage that like forces you to hold yourself to ethical standards, and like forces you to hold your quality of work to a specific standard. And and that has stuck with me. And I don't give my 9 to 5 necessarily 100% of myself all the time, but at the same time, like part of my job is in compliance and like trying to make sure things are above board, and like trying to make sure that, you know, we hold each other, like, like the core values that we put up on the wall or whatever are not just just something written on the wall for corporate
Yeah.
kids, you know?
Yeah, I listened to this podcast, One Step Beyond, and like I interviewed him and he interviewed me, and he's like a hardcore guy who's like does business coaching and stuff, and he talks a lot about like the kind of workplace ethics and mission statement. And I can't remember where I heard this. It's like, leaders are always like, well, this is our workplace culture. And, your workplace culture is what all the other people who work for you says it is. It's not what like the owner hopes it is or like looks at it through their microscope. It's really what like the people think and talk about when you're not around. That's actually your culture.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think that that's true for everybody. It's like, you judge the man by what he does when no one's watching, like to that same extent. So, like we talk about holding ourselves to like an ethical standard, a moral standard. Um, I know that you, like in your sobriety, like haven't really been doing that through a 12-step program, but within, as I understand the 12 steps, and like as I try to like practice those principles or carry it out in the world or whatever, it's like I'm not perfect, but like I do try to hold myself to a certain moral, spiritual standard where I conduct myself in a way that, you know, benefits more people than it harms or what have you. Um,
If
and
everybody did that, how good would it be?
right,
It would
right.
be very good.
Well, it's difficult to balance like my personal commitment to doing that with like a nihilistic realization that the world doesn't fucking do that. Like I don't expect everyone to live to that standard. And at times it's downright inconvenient for me to try to force myself to, but like I'm still just going to keep trying to do what I think is maybe the right thing at any given time.
Yeah, the world is definitely showing us right now that a lot of people don't live to a high ethical code, and it's tough. But even at at work, I mean, it's just you I don't know, your word is your bond. That's sort of silly, but right. I've said to people, I've said to my kids, I've said to like the owners of the company, reputation is so easy to lose. Good reputation, and it's so hard to get it back once it's gone.
Oh yeah, like it's you have to work like threefold to get back any kind of to undo whatever damage you do in that department. I think, it's not just like an equal pushback. It's like you have to go that extra another 100% on top of it to make up for it. That's something I don't know. I feel that way about like making personal amends as well. That's something that, it's one thing to say I'm sorry, to like to like say I'm sorry and like try to do some kind act to balance the karmic scale or whatever, but then also to like try to hold myself towards, well, I also have to continue every single day not doing all the shitty things that I'm saying I'm sorry for. And, I'm not perfect at doing that, but that takes so much more effort than just saying I'm sorry or just like trying to purely just negate the one thing or whatever.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a show me, don't tell me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I always say, like, I just try every day to just do a little better in all the things. And some
Yeah.
days I'm better at it than others, but the goal is like incrementally husband, father, coworker, whatever, just to be a little better,
Yeah,
every day.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's hard. My therapist will tell me, sometimes you have to accept that you're not, like today I did the bare minimum, but like everyone's alive and everything's gonna be okay. And like tomorrow I can try harder or whatever. And that's really difficult for me to work with sometimes because I like hold myself to this standard, or like I like expect so much more of myself than I'm sometimes able to deliver on.
Yeah, and I think another side of that, and I've talked about it before, is like perfectionism is also very dangerous, right? Like holding yourself to sort of an impossible standard. And I feel like this as a parent too, like early on, especially after the divorce, I was just trying to be like super dad, And the stress of that made me like not as good of a dad as if I just relaxed and accepted that I'm going to make some mistakes and that it's, progress, not perfection is the goal.
Yeah, it's difficult, like my relation to that is like the first year of our separation and like before our divorce was finalized, I was like in this shared living environment where I had like a couple of roommates and I couldn't have my kids in that environment. And so I felt like I was like overcompensating for everything and trying like so hard to just figure it all out. And then the next year was like I got my own place and like I'm back on my feet a little bit, but financially things were really hard. So I was stressed out all the time and like never enjoying being with my children.
Yeah, that financial thing was so real for me. It was really hard, all of a sudden you're like, because I was the one that made less, I didn't have an advanced degree. And I was like, you know, three people in a 2-bedroom apartment, which is sort of like this funny secret life of the single parent is like my bed was in the living room.
Yeah.
Like I gave the kids the bedrooms and I was like, put my bed in the living room, it was what it was. But I was so stressed about money. It definitely made me like, I could be short tempered and it's hard because you're like, man, like, but at the same time, I would also like with the oldest, I'm like, try and make life better by like, here's another Lego set. Like, and I created this kind of like, oh, when you feel bad, you got to go buy something kind of thing. And it took a long time to like work him out of that.
Yeah, yeah. I did a little bit of that because there was always this need to like um right when I moved into this apartment and like was working out all of that situation coincided with my son being about 5 years old and he got really into Pokemon for the first time, which I'm from that generation of like, I was about 10 years old when Pokemon came out. So it was like a big deal in my childhood or whatever. So I kind of went like like way overboard trying to be like, here's Pokemon cards and here's a toy and everything and like trying to build that bond or whatever. Um, and then like I realize now, as his personality has kind of bloomed a little more and like things have like our bond has gotten tighter. Like he would have much rather if I just like run around the backyard pretending to be a ninja with him or something. Like I didn't
Right.
need to buy him every Pokemon card.
Yeah. Cause I think at the end, like what kids really want is you just to be present.
Yes, 100%.
Right. Like that's the number one. I mean, Brene Brown will say, the ultimate goal of parenting is to love your kids and show them that they're worthy of love. Like, end of story. Like that. If you have to distill the whole thing, like it's that. But I think, yeah, just being like showing up, it sounds so simple. It's not always simple, but showing up matters. Like, like showing up at the times when it's not your kids are with their mom, right? But you still show up at whatever the band concert or the
Yeah.
soccer game or you're there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We had like school open house recently, like, meet the teacher, see his work kind of thing. And that was like something that I try very hard to make sure I'm there for all those things. But part of the reality of co-parenting and like doing the single parenting thing is just that you're going to miss some stuff. Like I can't be at every swim lesson. I can't be at every haircut or vacation or whatever, and that's okay. I think their mom is also kind of struggling with that. Like, sometimes I'll tell her like a story about what we did that day, and she like seems genuinely like saddened that she wasn't there for that experience. And I'm like, I understand, but like, that's the nature of what we're doing here for them is by both trying to be in their lives and like work out this new type of family unit together. Like that's the trade off.
Yeah. And seeing two kids sort of at the adulting end of that, like that co parenting thing and, doing things together, all that stuff, like it does pay off. I mean, no kid asks for it, right? Well, maybe I actually had a friend in high school. She's like, I really wish my parents would get divorced. But it was also because her dad was sort of a raging alcoholic. Um, but most kids are not looking for their parents to split up.
Yeah.
And so then you have to make the best of that situation, which is co-parenting, and the act of co-parenting is not always easy.
Right. I gotta ask, your two that went through the co-parenting experience, your older two, did you find that their bond kind of strengthened to each other because of that experience? So I feel like, my son and daughter are very, very close and like very loving and caring towards each other in a way that most siblings at that age aren't.
Yeah, so they're 4 years apart. Um, I think so, but I don't really know because it's what it was. You know what I mean? I mean the place. I think they got super tight or like reconnected in that tightness was COVID. Because we were all like together so much
Yeah.
that then they were, both teenagers. But the 4 year spread, right, is big a lot of times.
Yeah.
When
Yeah, that's
one kid
true.
is 4 and one kid is 8, they're sort of consuming different media and books, and their bedtime's different and all that. But during COVID, we kind of like developed these routines. Some of them were kind of silly, but we'd like watch Brooklyn Nine-Nine, during dinner, or New Girl, or like we kind of found these ways to kind of all connect. But I think that pulled them together. But I don't have like a solid answer because I don't know anything different. Like I can't compare it. But I think they're pretty close now. And what do they say about your siblings? It's like usually the longest relationship you have in your life is your sibling.
Yeah, yeah. I got a brother that I am a similar age gap from. He's about 5 years older than me. We were close at one point in our life, but now we talk maybe 3 or 4 times a year and run into each other only a couple times. And it's actually like our relationship, I feel like, is good because we're not close. Like if we talked and interacted all the time, we would stop getting along entirely.
Yeah, I think you got to just know like your situation. I mean, my brother's on the West Coast, so it's sometimes is hard with kids and time zones and all that stuff
Yeah.
to connect, but we have to connect a lot about, aging parents because I'm in 54, so my parents are in their 80s and my mom's got dementia, so there's a lot of like just checking in about that stuff.
Yeah. I'm super, sorry to hear that. Like my dad and mom they're in their like mid 60s, but they don't have a lot of access to great health care. We kind of grew up and live in poverty. So like I worry about that kind of thing for them as well, where it's like I know within the next like 10 years, those are conversations I'm gonna start to have.
Yeah, it's I mean, I guess they're good in natural conversations, but it's in that category of nobody prepared me for this conversation. It's sort of like when they hand you the baby and you're like, "Oh, Jesus. I'm happy about this, but no one prepared me for this." It is that sort of like I remember sitting around. It was sort of the last big trip before my mom's health kind of dipped more. We're all in the Bay Area visiting my brother, and we're sitting around the table, and it was this conversation like, Mom, where do you want to live if like dad dies first? And I'm like, okay, these are like good conversations, but nobody prepares you for that kind of conversation.
Yeah, for sure. I remember listening, I believe it was probably on NPR, perhaps some like political podcast that I was listening to, but basically this idea that like, the new nuclear family unit is such that people become parents in their late 20s or early 30s typically, and then it's like they spend 20 years parenting their kids, and as soon as they get their kids ready, they become parents to their parents. They start taking care of the older generation in their family, so it's they're spending, instead of 20ish years that was the typical time frame for parenting, uh, you really got to think of it more like a 35-year parenting time frame.
Yeah, and and as people sort of live longer and all that, and yeah, it is interesting. I mean, your role as being somebody's kid, it like in a way, it's this reversal. Like, okay, they did all this, and I'm their kid, but now like I'm going up to Maine in a few weeks to stay with my dad because he's having cataract surgery, and he can't drive. So like I got to leave my family here to do that, and it's what you do, but it's also hard to be away, from the kids and my wife. Um, just head up there on my own. I mean, it'll also be good. I'll see my mom, whose health isn't great, but um, and I'm looking forward to that time with my dad because I don't get a lot of that time anymore. But it is a different thing.
Yeah, true. I mean, I get it, and you do it because like, something were to happen to one of my parents, like I have no hesitation to go take care of them or provide whatever they need that I am capable of because they have and would do like literally anything for me. They've done 10,000 times more for me to get me to where I am.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is like you'll help them. I mean, it's just what you do. We're cheery fellas tonight. Let's go cheerier and talk a little bit about like what was your first sort of intersection with like punk rock and hardcore? Like where did you like and I've ended up talking to like a lot of kind of punk and hardcore people on this podcast. I don't kind of know why. And then I also want to go back to the notion of like identifying as straight edge in recovery because there's this thread. Let's do that first. There's this
Okay.
thread that I fell into on Instagram, and some like, and this is that sort of, I think, overly rigid viewpoint of things like with straight. Well, you can't be straight edge if you actually ever like had a substance use disorder, which I think is bullshit. But because I think it's also a mindset of like healthy living.
Okay, so their merit was you can't be straight edge if you've ever used drugs or like had an
Right.
issue
Like
with using drugs.
if you abuse drugs, you can't
Well,
claim
like,
straight edge.
right.
It's not recovery. It's not a recovery program.
Well, then like 50% of the Discord scene doesn't count. And like, Alberil doesn't count because they all used drugs before
Right.
or whatever, like fuck that. That's bullshit. Um, no, I identified as straight. So I was a smoker way longer than I drank or used or anything else. I started smoking cigarettes when I was like 13 years old, on and off until, I was, I didn't quit smoking until right before my daughter was born. So it's been about 4 years ago. Uh, and it was at that point that I was like, oh, I'm doing nothing now. Like, like I am kind of like, but I didn't feel the need to like call myself straight edge or whatever. And I didn't really care about calling myself straight edge. Um, I jokingly will tell people that like right after the last like drinking relapse that I had like made this commitment that like it was time, I was like never going back to that or whatever. Um, and I bought this Earth Crisis hoodie. And I was like, that Earth Crisis hoodie is why I claim straight edge. But, that's just like the coincidental time frame or whatever.
No,
Um,
that's a band that comes up a lot on
yeah.
this. And they're like right up the road. DJ Rose, who is an early member of that band, has tattooed me.
Oh, right
Um,
on. Yeah.
yeah. So cool. Very cool guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for a band that's known in a very small community, Earth Crisis comes up a lot.
Earth Crisis is maybe one of the most like culturally impactful bands of all time because like they spread the straight edge message for most of the 90s. Like there's a good chance if you know anyone who's vegan, there's a good chance that you can trace like one or two steps back to Earth Crisis for them.
100%. Right. Like, sort of straight edge came out of DC, but vegan straight edge came out of Syracuse, New York.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Scott Krause, the guitar player of that band, lives in my area in Raleigh, and see him around shows. I've caught some of his other bands down here. He's a nice guy. There's a flyer right behind me. I know the listeners can't see, but my one of my old bands got the privilege to play with Carl's band Freya here a couple years ago. All wonderful people who still conduct themselves very well. You know, like I have nothing but love and admiration for that band. But you asked about like my first kind of touches of punk rock. I had an uncle who was a musician. He played like jazz and like classic country and that kind of stuff. And I remember digging through records. I can't remember if they were his or like another aunt or uncle's or whomever's when I was about 8 or 9. So we're talking like late 90s. And I saw a copy of The Clash's Combat Rock, um, which is a killer fucking record that I still put on
Yeah.
a lot. So that kind of primed me for like classic punk, like uh, obviously found out about like the Ramones and Stooges and that sort of like 70s punk and proto punk kind of stuff. But I didn't like dive headfirst into like music is for me uh, until uh, in 2001. This band Thursday put out a record called Full Collapse. It's like one of the bigger emo like post hardcore records in history or whatever. And I just was at the right age. I was, eighth or ninth grade, and I saw it on MTV, and it was just like whatever it was. I was like, that's so fucking cool, and I want to do that. And like within that year, it was the thing that I just dived into. I was like, oh, they're on Victory Records. So what else is on Victory Records? Well, like here's Integrity and Earth Crisis. Well, man, that's scary, but it's cool, you know? And then by the end of that year, I was at DIY gigs seeing bands like Converge play and, probably terrifying my parents who had no clue what it or frame of context. And it just like it was a thing. Like, I played in punk and hardcore bands through high school, and in my 20s, I kind of like was too busy drinking and like partying and stuff to like care about going to shows as much. But I always like listened, like kept in touch with it musically, but like it just wasn't my community or whatever. And then like kind of in the post COVID time frame, it was like on my mind to try playing music again. Like I had all this energy. I was mostly sober at the time. I like was a new parent and I was going through a lot of shit. So I started writing songs about it. And then when I got divorced, it was like, well, I'm bored and I'm not going to sit in this shitty 400, like 40 square foot bedroom that I'm renting or whatever and just like be sad all the time. I'm going to go to a show. So I just started going to shows and like fell into the North Carolina DIY community and like met a lot of really cool people, got the inspiration to start writing songs and like got some bands started. And now that's like, my community, my friend group, my family, like the people in the world that I lean on are all part of that world now.
Yeah, right on. I have this theory. It is not scientifically based. It's anecdotally based. But, we're kind of a world of anti-science now. But my theory is the age of 14 is the age of, if you intersect with punk rock around the age of 14, that is the age it speaks to your soul. If it's going to speak to you, that is the age. And for me, it was the Clash, because I was a teenager of the mid 80s, and it was like London Calling, boom. And I was like in it. And then it was, going back to like the Sex Pistols, but also bands like The Exploited, you know. And but I also really got into jazz at the same time too, because I also think that's also a rebellious music,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and I would argue that punk is pretty intellectual, and so is jazz. And then there's the whole like country intersect, like not really commercial country, but more of like the Johnny Cash flavor intersection with punk. But the age of 14, that's my theory.
I think that there's something to that. It's you say it connects with your soul, and I think that that's true. And like we all get this like I can do that bug out of punk rock, or like the ones of us who stick around forever do. And it might not be I can be in a band, but like I can draw the posters, or I can book the gig, or, I can give them a place to crash, or I can write about this, or whatever it is. It's like you find something in that community. There's like a niche need that needs to be filled, and you fill it. And then all of a sudden it just like is your life. Um, and that's kind of, again, like that's something that kind of happened to me. And from that, like, I look at punk as this trade-off, as this thing that I've given like 20 years of my life to, uh, and like so much money going to gigs and all of that stuff. Like, I've given that, and in exchange, I got a set of personal and political ethics that like shape who I am, exposure to so many different points of view, knowledge of so many things, both historical and literary, that like came from reading liner notes. And like, you know, um, I probably would have never given a shit about Neil Young, but because like Jeff from Thursday used interpolations of Neil Young lyrics, like I got into Neil Young. And
Right.
like you just learn to love art and the world in a completely different way. Like if you give yourself to punk rock culture.
And I think it also presents like this notion of I am the master of my own destiny a little bit, and that nothing's like too good for me, right? Like, oh, I can pick up a guitar, or I can make this art, or I can like just it's that DIY, like, oh, I'm just gonna like try it.
Mhm.
Like there's no reason not to like try it. Nothing is exclusive.
Yeah, yeah. It's a lot of trial and error. And there's a lot of like, this thing didn't work, but I'm still trying to find a way to channel that energy. Like I did this podcast a few years ago, and the idea was like to get people on to talk about records that we love and talk about their music or their art or whatever they're working on. And like, the editing and uploading and like scheduling and all of that shit of a podcast just isn't for me. Uh, but
It
I,
is not it is not always easy,
yeah,
It's like, but I love it, and I feel like I have a mission with this, but it is. It's like
it's a labor of love.
it takes a lot of time. I presented it at the 13-year-olds class last year, and one of the kids like, you must like make a lot of money doing this. And I'm like, I lose money. I 100% lose money doing this. This is a totally DIY self-funded endeavor. I
Yeah.
pay the hosting fees. I do all the things. Like, wouldn't it be nice to do this for a living? It sure would. To like read books and listen to music and interview a few people every week and like make enough to live on. But that is an unlikely turn of events.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, and like I'm so like disconnected from what that specific generation kind of thinks of the world, because I don't have any access to it. I have like nobody in my life in that age group or whatever. But they've got to be able to look at like these YouTubers or influencer people or whatever who portray all of this fictitious wealth and think that like, oh, like being a YouTuber makes you the wealthiest person in the world or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
it's got to be confusing.
Well, and one of the youngest, he got really upset. It was something on YouTube, and it was like the kids were pretending to break into a swimming pool, and like the person was mad. I was like, this is not real. And he was like really upset by that. I'm like, it's just, this is actually their dad is pretending to be the mad neighbor. Like this, but because it's out there, I mean, I don't think just kids think this way either, but like it just because it's like in the world doesn't make it real. Right.
Oh,
Like, there's so many people who sort of portray this wealth of like, you just rented this house or like all these things. I'm like, and I think it's just weird to put your kids in a position like that. I'm like, that just doesn't fit with my notion of parenting, to kind of like try and economize yourself via your kids.
oh yeah, for sure. I don't even want to get into the ethics of all of that, but what you were just saying kind of circles back around to the punk rock thing, which is that's another thing that, like, if you become a punk rock lifer, you get this bullshit detector that I don't think any other culture can give you. Like, and not just for the level of like who's a good person or who seems shady, but also like you get this bullshit detector of like who is being insincere, you know? And I'm thankful for that because it allows me to filter out so much shit. Like in my personal life, in the media, like I can genuinely make really good educated guesses on who is being insincere.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting. I totally agree. I've not really thought about it that way, but I totally agree. I think there's also an interesting challenge when you are the punk person, but then you have the realization I also need to pay my rent or my mortgage, and you're like, it's sort of back to like the day job, you know. Like I go to the day job and I like it. Like I work with good people. We do good work. I work hard. Um, but it is like I struggled for a long time with this notion of authenticity. Like, oh, is this like this isn't who I thought I would be? Like, sort of, I don't really punch a clock. Like I get a salary and all that, but I'm like, is this the person I thought I would be? And how do I make those two things align? I mean, I think that was part of like my struggle with like alcohol and depression and stuff was I felt disconnected from like who I thought I was and who I thought I would be. And I didn't ever like in a way care about like a career, or anything like that. Like I loved working in a bookstore when I worked in a bookstore. It's a great job, paid shit, you know? Like not but it was like, oh, I'm thinking about books, I'm talking about books, like it's great. And so then you have these sort of expenses in this life and you're like, oh, I gotta like pay for this stuff, but it feels like like a little bit I feel like a sellout.
Oh yeah, there's always that little bit of guilt there, but like at the same time, part of what gets me past that at my age and like in the phase of life that I'm in is that like the things that I do to connect with like punk rock culture or whatever and like be a part of that world, I still have like it's all on my terms, like I run this fanzine that like, and I'm starting to do like a little tape label as a part of that umbrella. And I do it purely like exactly the way I want to do it. It's 100% DIY. I literally write the names of the tape with a fucking Sharpie or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, the bands that I play in, we are not consciously, looking towards any kind of trend. We're not looking towards any kind of like doing literally anything, whether it be booking a show or writing a song or like going for a sound. We do nothing that is not 100% what we all want to do. And like, we exercise all of that creative freedom through that outlet, so it feels like I've got this one little nook in the house that is my life where I am in control of everything and I still have 100% punk rock credibility, and I am still in control of everything I do.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's what this podcast has become for me. I mean, I think it's like a recovery tool too. I mean, I'm like 15 years sober, so I honestly don't ever feel tempted or anything. And we're a sober house. My wife's also in recovery, so it's not. There's like none of that there, but like talking to people about their stories. But it is that thing. And I remember I put up something. I'm a lefty. I just am. And I put something up, and it's a couple people are like, unsubscribe, unsubscribe. Like, how dare you speak for all the sober dads? I'm like, this podcast is just me. Like, okay, it says crew, but like, I mean, I'm like, it's just me. So like, I'm gonna like pick the people who seem interesting to talk to. Like, I mean, I have people approach me now, and that's nice. But like, yeah, there's a reason I talk to a lot of like old punk dudes, right? Because like, I am one. But it is like it's like your band, right? You're doing the things on your terms, even though you have to do the thing that makes a living, or working and keeping that arts community alive where you live, right? Like being
Yeah.
involved in that and making sure some other 14-year-old's gonna get that.
Yeah, for sure. It's difficult to find that balance of like expressing your politics through your platform or whatever. Like Pipe Layer is a band that we don't it's not political in nature. It's a lot of about my sobriety. Another member of our band is also a recovering addict and alcoholic. There's a lot of that emotional content there. There's a lot of the weight of fatherhood and of loss and all of that. And so like there's no reason for us to make that political. But then, I needed an outlet for that, so we started another band. Like, we've got this other band we're starting called Circle Five, and the entire purpose of that is for myself and my best friend Andrew to be able to express just exactly how fucking angry we are at the state of the world.
Right.
And so within that context, it's like, no, fuck you. This is 100% our politics that we're talking about. Like, you're either on board or you're not.
Yep. Yeah, and we're not apologizing.
Exactly. Yes.
Like I can't apologize for who I am and the stories I'm going to tell, and you go start your own podcast. Like
Yes.
go start
Exactly.
your own band. You can start another band if you don't like our band, which is the punk thing, right? Just go tell your stories. It's like all good. Yeah, talk about your music writing a little bit.
Um. Yeah. I mean, so we'll just kind of approach everything through the lens of Pipe Layer as far as that like question goes, because that band it's a three-piece band. Myself, our drummer Graham, bass player Nate. Songs kind of start from like, for me, from a lyrical place. Usually I have this like theme in mind of like, I want to write a song that gets this emotion out of me. So I'll typically have some kind of lyrical ideas. Then I'll start working on song structures that allow me to be able to sing or allow Nate to be able to sing those words. Um, and we kind of channel that through. There's a lot going on in that band, but through the lens of like sludge metal and noise rock and just like any kind of raw, heavy, aggressive music. That we want to touch upon. If it makes sense and if it suits the cathartic need of the song, like that's where we'll go. Um, the first record we put out last year is called A History of Dereliction. And it's like, it was this veiled like concept kind of idea about like an addict in recovery choosing to stop being in recovery, like choosing to relapse and choosing to die. Um, it's not 100% autobiographical, but at the time that I wrote a majority of those ideas, like it is a part of where I think I might have been had I not chosen to go to AA. And then, it's really weird. We played this festival, and debuted a new song over the last couple of weeks. And I was talking with people about how like it feels weird to now be in a spot where like I'm writing a song about healing and like it ends positively and it's like replacing all of my sorrows with new tomorrows. It's like that's a fucking weird concept because I don't know what it's like to be healthy enough to write that song, but I did it.
But it can still be loud.
Yeah, it's this like weird 8-minute sludge metal into Godspeed You Black Emperor thing. Like I don't it just happened. It is what it is. I don't know. But it just kind of flows out of me naturally and like through a lot of times I go to the other two guys in the band and I'm just like, I don't know what we need to do right here. Like you guys just start banging on this idea until something clicks for all of us. And I will figure out what I'm going to do around you guys. And it's an awesome set of chemistry that we've come up with to get to that point. Cause like we're all lifers. We've all been in 1,000 bands. Our drummer has been in the like on a pretty big label, being a band that tours 200 days of the year lifestyle for a while. Which is part of what like led to his life collapsing and burning out and having to get sober and restart everything and to get to this point too. Um, it's awesome. And then as far as like, like writing songs for Circle Five, it's like I just write 1 minute hardcore punk songs and then my friend writes words to go over them. Like it's that simple.
Nothing like a good 1 minute song too.
Yeah, yeah,
You get a
yeah.
lot. You can get a lot of songs on a 30-minute record.
I don't know how long the lead time is. Like our little 10-song, 10-minute demo may or may not be out by the time this releases. But it is very much a like, we like Minor Threat and SSD and those kind of bands, and so we just want it to play really fast, really aggressive bursts of energy that again that we could channel our kind of discontent at the world through.
Yeah. Well, I will link to all that stuff, and we'll just make sure people like go back and you hit me up when it does come out, so I
Yeah,
can
for sure.
put it out in the world too. Because I think that's part of all this, and what I do is like community. I think, and that's punk, that's parenting, like that's everything. And so often comes down to like community.
It's amazing to me how like everywhere I go through the world of like going to shows and connecting with other artists and other people who are involved in their local little scene, like how many people you meet who are just like you're the same person as me, like we are, like um we went down to Wilmington, North Carolina, and played with the band that I didn't know anybody. Crashed at a bass player's house from that band, and he's the same fucking person as me. Like a couple years apart, grew up in different areas, but we lived through essentially the same life experience and like connected immediately. It's wild to me how the personal, like I know that this is different for other people, and I'm not typically the most extroverted person, but within that specific context, it's like there's no distinction. It's like once we meet and we establish that connection, you're my best friend forever. Like because I grew up in this idea that like it was so rare to find anyone who cared about these things, and it was so weird to find anyone who shared your politics. So as an adult now, it's like I latch on to everyone who does and like embrace everyone who does because I want this bigger connected world of people.
Yeah, and it's super important. I mean, I've been trying to explore the notion of also connecting with the people I don't agree with is an interesting, world moment I think we're in, because I think that like you have your core group, right? And the people you agree with, but what about like, the folks who you don't, but you want to try and still build community with them. It's an interesting challenge.
It is. It's I'm struggling with the idea of giving people space and giving people, particularly when it comes to like global politics right now. Like, there's just such a tight line of like, if I let you say anything, you're going to go fascist almost immediately. So, like, should I even listen to you at all? It's so difficult for me to feel like I can give people that opportunity to even speak on those kind of things anymore.
Yeah, it was interesting. I had somebody on, and we went down this whole notion of healthcare. And, I sort of walked him through it. And by the end, he's like, yeah, like healthcare through your employer is dumb. Like, why are we I was like, yeah, we're the only Western country that does that. And it's a stupid system that doesn't work because it leaves lots of people either with no health care or wildly shitty, expensive health care. But I was like, okay, we're going to kind of wander this path step by step. And, because then we talked, he's like, yeah, definitely like, substance abuse treatment, you shouldn't have to pay for that. I was like, okay, now we're like kind of going down this road where we can kind of talk about this. So it was an interesting, process. My oldest, he's very like masterful at like, he's done some work in the trades with like some really conservative folks. And he's like, I just kind of like quietly talk about stuff and help them see like the reason like you're not paid well, or, the reason the schools your kids go to are struggling are actually not what you think they are. They're not, it's not what you're being told they are. He's so good at like he just like takes the time.
Yeah, I also sort of have to walk that balance. I live and work within an environment that is like presumably conservative and like very Bible belty, um, very stuffy in that regard. And so I have this thing that where I try uh, to be as like pro labor, pro union as I have the voice to be able to safely. Like
Yeah.
I'll put a major corporation on blast like FedEx. We interact. A huge part of my job is just sending and receiving thousands of FedEx packages a week, and it's just like they fired all of their Teamsters or whatever. Like they have no more union workers in this area. They opened up this temp facility where they're contracting out to any rando who can pass the drug test, basically, and those people show up, there's no standards, and like it's super frustrating. And I'm like, the problem is not that driver. The problem is the blatant capitalist anti-union practice of FedEx that led us to this driver.
Right. Because that driver would probably prefer to be well trained and better paid with benefit.
Exactly. Yes.
Most people don't want to sign up for the shitty job.
Yeah. And most people, whether they lean on the right or left politically in America, they agree on a couple of things. One is that the dollar does not go far enough to meet their needs. Two is that their employer is to blame for that. Almost everyone universally agrees upon that. But, through the powers that be, it's like we can't for some reason get past the wall of distraction to do anything about it.
This is super fun. Before we, wrap up, I often like to ask sort of, do you have like a parenting secret weapon that you use? Or, one example I've given is one guy says he comes home from work and he puts his cell phone away until his kid's asleep. Like,
God, I wish I had that kind of resolve.
I know.
The biggest
I
thing
admired that.
The biggest thing that aids me in parenting is that I'm also a giant child. I collect big robots and Godzilla figurines and like will totally get down on the floor and play action figures with my son or run around pretending that I am an animal to amuse my daughter or whatever. And like my commitment to the bit and my willingness to be just shamelessly silly with them, I think, is the thing that goes the furthest. The resolve though, like I wish I had the ability to say like, oh man, I'm not going to open my phone. I'm not going to, spend 20 minutes of them watching TV while I get dinner prepared. Like it's really difficult to cram everything into those couple hours before they go to bed,
Yeah, it's a very limited time and you got to make dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, kids got to eat. All right. Well, this was super fun, man. I appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Sober Dad Crew is a DIY project by Stephen Kimball, who writes, edits, and produces the show. To support the show, please review it where you listen to podcasts or visit SoberDadCrew.com to buy some merchandise or make a donation.